really is a delight for us to be able to host this event. This event, of course, has vital symbolic value, but I don't think all 400 of you are here tonight just for the symbolism. I think you're here tonight because these two gentlemen have between them decades, nearly a century of experience in together helping their countries navigate the sometimes, shall I say, the often turbulent, stormy waters of the Middle East. And it is I think, a privilege that all of us will have the opportunity during our conversation to benefit from the insights that both of you bring to bear on the important issues that we all collectively face in the Middle East today. So with that, if you may, let's begin. So, gentlemen, in recent months and years, both of you come from countries that have had, shall we say, difficult moments with the Obama administration. You, Your Royal Highness, you wrote, I think, a very compelling and blunt response to President Obama's use of the term free rider and his call for sharing the Middle East between your country and another country on the other side of the Gulf. And you, Ya'qub, you and your government, well, you did a very good job restraining your enthusiasm for the president's signal achievement of the Iran nuclear agreement. So I'd like to begin with serious questions about America and your countries and how you view the direction of your nation's relationships with America. I think everyone in this room, if they've read one thing over the last a couple of months, they have read the 19,000 words of Jeffrey Goldberg's The Obama Doctrine, which, to encapsulate, projects the idea that the Middle East is less important to America than it used to be, that America should be more reluctant to engage in the region's problems, and that our allies are often burdens, not assets. Some of this we've heard on the campaign trail in the last few months from various candidates as well. So I'd like to ask both of you, these ideas, do you feel that these are an aberration, or do you think that this is now deeply embedded in how America will approach the Middle East in the years ahead? Your Highness.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. First of all, let me thank you, Mr. Satloff, and the people here at YNAB for inviting me to be here and to meet with the General. I must say, when I last met with the board of the YNAB, I invited them to come to Saudi Arabia. And some of them said they would gladly come. And I remember one of them said, if I come, will I be allowed to come? I said, of course, but if you come there, we will not allow you to go back. But more seriously, of course, feel free to take this invitation, any of you, please, to come and visit.
Is it including me?
Well, sign the peace first, and then you can come. On America, for us in Saudi Arabia, America is a strategic partner. And it's a partnership that is not just confined to the governments, but we feel that we have a special link with the American people. Those of you who don't know the Arabian Peninsula will not appreciate that for many years it was a place of warfare and poverty and disease and all of the ills that could befall any peoples, until it was united in 1932. And a few years after that, the Americans were the ones who came and helped develop our oil industry. And I know there are many people who consider oil as the worst commodity that can be used for either transport or producing electricity or other things. But for us in Saudi Arabia, it's been a lifeline. And everything that has come in the kingdom without the resources that developed from that oil would not have been undertaken. Now, of course, we're in the position of having to go forward and try to find alternatives to oil. And that is going to be another challenge. And we hope that in as much as we worked with the United States in developing our oil industry, that we will continue to work with the United States, and more particularly with the people of the United States, to go forward and develop the alternatives that we seek to replenish our not just economy, but our well-being. And so that strategic relationship with America is going to remain from the Saudi point of view. Mr. Obama and other presidents have had disagreements with the kingdom on various issues. One of them, of course, is the issue of Israel and Palestine. But that has not interfered or, if you like, affected the view from the kingdom that our relationship with the United States is a strategic one, and that it will continue to be so. One figure that I give you today shows that view of the Saudi people, not just the government. There are more than 60,000 Saudi students spread throughout the United States in your universities. And that is a reflection not only on the fact that our young people want to acquire their skills and know-how in America, but also that the parents of these youngsters feel comfortable that their youngsters are going to be taught the skills and know-how in the United States.
Okay. General Amidror.
I share with the Prince Turkey the notion that there is no substitute to the United States of America in the Middle East. And all those who believe that others will do the job that the Americans did in the past, I think, are in a big mistake. And it is not going to happen. There is no substitute. From our point of view, the relations are going not through the White House, but through the American people. And at the end of the day, it's led to the relations with the White House, not vice versa. So we have to work harder and to have the same relations that we did in the past in the future. And presidents are coming and going, but we will have to have strong relations with the American people, and we'll do whatever is needed to have these relations in the future. I believe that although we have some disagreements, and not every word that the president said about the Middle East and about the state of Israel we agree about, but at the end of the day, I think that we have very good relations in many areas which are crucial to Israel. If you ask today, your people in the Pentagon and our people in the IDF never had been such good relations. The same is about the intelligence community. I think that the position of the State of Israel in both the Senate and the House is very strong. If you go to polls in America and you ask about the State of Israel, the relations between Israel and the United States, you see fantastic percentage of support to Israel. So with all the disagreements, and there are some few disagreements, one of them is about the Palestinian issue. I think the relations between Israel and the United States of America are very good, and we have to make all the effort that it will be better in the future. I am not pessimistic about it. I'm very optimistic.
Okay, two very optimistic conclusions here. I'm going to keep on pressing. You both focused on the American people, which of course is the basis of our democracy and what gives strength to any president's decision to do any initiative. Now, we're celebrating this year the 25th anniversary since the United States sent 500,000 soldiers to the Gulf to liberate Kuwait. That seems like a light year ago for presidents, 9/11, multiple Middle East wars, thousands of American deaths. When you look back and you look to where we are today, do you still believe that the United States is as committed today to guaranteeing regional security as we were a quarter century ago? And do you still believe that the United States is as committed as it was then to dispatch the strength and power it was needed to secure its interest as it was a quarter century ago?
I don't. And I think this is the general situation has changed. And that's why there needs to be a reevaluation and a recalibration, if you like, of the relationship. I don't think President Obama's retrenchment, if you like, from committing the United States to the same degree that it was 25 years ago on liberating Kuwait is purely a personal reflection. I think America has changed as we have changed in the area. So we have to work together to figure out where we're going. I think both of us recognize that we have common interests that bind us together, whether it is fighting terrorism, whether it is engaging in improving peace in the area, or in other such endeavors that benefit both our countries. But I think the American people also, because of those events that you mentioned since the liberation of Kuwait, perhaps feel that too much used to be expected of them, and that they should not be in that position where they're obliged to undertake certain responsibilities that they used to do before. And I think this is where it is very important for both peoples and both countries, and of course the governments have to do it, is to sit down together, identify where we agree with each other, where we can go forward together, and agree to disagree on issues that we find difficult to come to terms with. That does not mean a divorce. On the contrary, I think it means a very mature relationship between adults, if you like, whereby we can, as I said, enhance what can bring us together and agree to keep the peace, if you like, on the issues that don't necessarily bring us together.
General?
I don't know if you know, but today was the Memorial Day for the Holocaust in the State of Israel. And next week is the Independence Day, the 68th Independence Day of the State of Israel. Based on our experience in the Holocaust, from the first day of our independence, it was a strong decision of the founders of Israel. Israel is not seeking foreign forces to be defended. We will defend Israel by ourselves. We did it in the past, and we intend to do it in the future. We don't ask any American soldier to sacrifice his life for the sake of Israel. If you have your own interest in the Middle East and you want to send forces here and there, it's okay. From our point of view, Israel will defend itself by itself. And I think this is one of the cornerstones of our relations. We are more than happy to get money from the United States of America to buy weapon systems in America. We are more than happy to buy the first-class weapon systems in America, to share information and to exchange intelligence with America. We don't want any American soldier to sacrifice of his life for the defense of the State of Israel. And we intend to continue with this policy in the future. So from our point of view, the decision is clear. Israel will defend itself by itself. It will cost us a lot. I don't know if you know, but around 6% of our GDP is allocated to security and intelligence and whatever is around it. It's a lot. but we are ready even to increase it if will be a need in the future, because of the decision that Israel will build its capability with a lot of help from the United States of America, no question. But in the crucial issue of sacrificing soldiers, we don't ask anyone from the American side to be sacrificed for the state of Israel. So with all the changes that we see related to the Middle East, that decision, which is a cornerstone in our philosophy and grand strategy, will not change.
All right. Let me, since we've now been essentially speaking in parallel, let's see if we can speak together. And let me ask you about an issue in which historically both of you have shared great concern, which is Iran. We're all faced with the reality of the Iran nuclear deal. We see Iran's role in Iraq, its role in Syria, its role in Lebanon, its role in Yemen. Let me ask, from your perspectives, what do you see as the most serious threat Iran poses to you? And what would you like the United States to do about this range of challenges that I just listed? General, why don't we begin this question with you?
The main concern relating to Iran from the Israeli point of view is that one day Iran will go nuclear. Either it will be a violation of the agreement or towards the end of the agreement. After 10 or 15 years, in principle, the Iranians can go nuclear. And from the Israeli point of view, this is a threat to our existence, and we will not allow it to happen. With the Americans, without the Americans, as I said, Israel is ready to defend itself by itself. There are other issues which the Iranians are very much involved in. Terrorism, for example, the Iranians continue to build the capabilities of Hezbollah, which today has more than 100,000 rockets and missiles. And more of them are more accurate, threatening the center of Israel, and very sensitive targets inside Israel. We are cooperating with the Americans, building together anti-missile systems from Arrow to David Sling to Iron Dome. But at the end of the day, this number of rockets and missiles means that a war with Hezbollah will be a devastating one. From our point of view, very important for the people of Israel. But no question, it will be very devastating for the people of Lebanon, because to destroy all these missiles and rockets in Lebanon means that many Lebanese will be killed. Not because we want, because the missiles and the rockets are now stored in the middle of civilian areas. And that will be a devastating situation, but we don't have any legitimacy to our decision makers to give up and not to try to destroy those missiles before they will be launched into Israel. This is one area where the Iranians are very active. The second one is Syria. The Iranians try to build in the Golan Heights another launching pad against Israel, and we will not let them build it, whatever will be the price. So and at the same time, they are continue to build the international network of terrorism all around the world, from Africa to Asia, from Asia to Europe, and again, it's a constant war. By the way, in this war, we are cooperating very close with the Americans behind the curtains. It's clear that we are working together to prevent the Iranians from building their international network of terrorism. So in all these three areas, the Iranians are very active, and look, they are testing every second month a new type of long-range missile. There is no any logic in these missiles if they are not with nuclear warhead. So we know what to expect from what's happening now in Iran, and we are preparing ourselves, and we are ready to pay the price, because we want to be more prepared when they will be in this situation after the period of the agreement, or if it will be a violation of the agreement. And in this case, this is a very good case in which better cooperation with countries in the Middle East, which have the same interest, might help both of us or all of us to deal with the Iranians. Up till now, we are dealing with the Iranians based on the Israeli capabilities, and we are very determined to be in a situation to deal with this threat in the future if will materialize.
Okay. Prince Turkey?
If Israel has peace with the Arab world, I think we can meet any challenges. And the Arab Peace Initiative presented by Saudi Arabia in 2002, in my view, presents the best equation for establishing peace between Israel and the Arab world. And from that context, I can't understand why the Netanyahu government doesn't seek to grab that offer that was presented in 2002 and work with not just the United States, but with the Arab world in establishing peace. As the General said, cooperation between Arab countries and Israel in meeting the threats wherever they come from, whether it is Iran or any other source of that, would be much better fortified in a situation where there is peace between the Arab countries and Israel. And I don't see any particular difficulty in undertaking that. Many of you here obviously have not only read about, but many of you participated in the discussions and negotiations that have been going on since 1967 to establish the two-state solution. And there is nothing, there is no requirement either for divine revelation or Einsteinian genius to know what the peace is. It's two states, mutual swaps of territory, and declaration of peace on both sides that will bring the Arab countries to recognize Israel and establish normal relations in return for Israel's acceptance of a Palestinian state in the West Bank and Gaza. And that is where mutual cooperation, not just on issues of Iran. I always tell my Jewish audiences that with Jewish money and Arab brains, we can go a long way together. And so, if we can get that situation, think of what we can do on science, on technology, on humanitarian affairs, on all of the things that need to be looked at. Every year there is a new disease that comes out. Every year there is poverty that we have to look at, and I think there is much that can be not only resolved but initiated by a joint effort once the peace is signed between Israel and the Arab countries.
General?
Yeah. First, I agree about the brain and the money.
Well, I'm glad.
And yes, if we cooperate, no question that the world will be much better. But I think that the biggest mistake is to give the key for this new Middle East to Abu Mazen and his people. I think that after so many years in which some people here within the audience spent years and didn't succeed, and it is not one prime minister, with all due respect to this prime minister, it's prime ministers before him who didn't succeed. It's not only Netanyahu, it's Olmert before him and Ehud Barak before him, and with all due respect, Rabin and Peres didn't succeed. I remember myself in my job when they negotiated with the Palestinians, and the same day, the same Palestinians authorized other Palestinians to make terror actions in Israel. So it's not this prime minister. It's between the Palestinians and the Israelis that an agreement cannot be agreed. And instead of giving Abu Mazen and his people the key for the change in the Middle East, I think that we should think out of the box. And what should be done is to begin the change in the Middle East and under this umbrella to bring the Palestinians and the Israelis to negotiate. If will be an umbrella of cooperation between Arab states and the State of Israel, and under this umbrella to bring the Palestinians to negotiate, we might have an agreement. If we wait till the Palestinians will have an agreement with Israel, and then to build this cooperation of the Middle East, we don't have an agreement and we don't have the change in the Middle East, both.
Is the Arab Peace Initiative such an umbrella?
The Arab initiative for itself is not an umbrella because there is no any cooperation in this initiative with the State of Israel. It's an offer to Israel to come. At the beginning it was take it or leave it. Now I understand it is to negotiate. And remember in 2002, Syria was in. Do you see Assad negotiating with the Israelis, with all due respect to the initiation? Do you see the Lebanese negotiating with the Israelis? Today, the Arab world is different, and the countries which are behind the Arab League are different than in 2002. It's a new opportunity, but instead of beginning with the negotiations with no one succeeded up till now. See how many American presidents tried and failed. How many prime ministers in Israel tried and failed. So instead of going again the same path that didn't work in the past, let's change it. Let's build something in the Middle East within the countries that have the same interest fighting radical Islam, either it is Sunni or Shiites, either it's Hezbollah or ISIS, and then to bring in the Palestinians and the Israelis to negotiate adding this umbrella. If you take the other way and wait to the agreement, it's a long job.
Another point of disagreement between us. And so this is something that where I think America can play a role. And obviously, I don't agree with the general on that. And I think the Arab Peace Initiative, as I said, is the formula that can bring us together. But the general sees otherwise. He wants us to start cooperating with Israel and do whatever is done in that journey and forget about the occupation of Palestine and various other issues that deal with the daily occurrences that are taking place on the ground in Palestine, whether it is expansion of Israeli settlements in the West Bank, whether it is the roadblocks, whether it is all the issues that you are all aware of. I don't need to repeat them to you. So this is a difference of view, and I think that I'm very glad that I meet other Israelis who have similar views to mine rather than to the generals. And so
it's a democracy.
Yes, indeed. Absolutely. And I also meet with Americans who have different views than
another democracy. By the way, if I may say, I'm not saying to the Saudis or other Arab countries forget or neglect the Palestinian issue. On the contrary, I think that the way to solve it at the end is to cooperate with Israel instead of dictating to Israel. If you cooperate with Israel and will be an umbrella in the Middle East under which Israelis and Arab countries work together to solve many problems. You spoke about substitute to oil in Saudi Arabia. In many areas we can contribute. And if we have such an agreement, it's less than agreement, such understanding that we work with each other, it will be easier to bring both Palestinians and Israelis to negotiate. When it is about finish the business and then we will build something new in the Middle East, it didn't work up till today. And I don't know, I'm not so many years in the business, but if I would have to mark something, to make people buy something for so many years and it didn't succeed, I'll find another way. To go with the same old way, which didn't succeed, I'm saying again, it's not, with all due respect to the Prime Minister, it's not Netanyahu. It didn't work under Olmert, it didn't work under Ehud Barak, it didn't work under Rabin and Peres. If you look for something different, do something different. And I believe that if you look out of the box and instead of going the same way again, you build something from the outside and bring both sides under this umbrella to negotiate, it will be much more better as a beginning and even to conclude at the end. Because there is something, a framework around it, which help both sides to make the compromises which are needed, from both sides, by the way.
But this is the whole point of where I'm coming from in this issue. You say, General, that prime ministers have all not been able to reach an agreement with the Palestinians. Who among those who are aware of where Abu Mazen has stood on the issue of peace with the Israelis can say that he was not the man to negotiate with? He, in front of Yasser Arafat, the late Yasser Arafat, stood up publicly and said that the second intifada is wrong, that there is not a military solution to the issue with the Israelis, that we must have negotiations with Israel. In public, he said that at the time when Arafat was alive, and you know what could have happened to him, but it didn't. And when he became president in Palestine, the late Ariel Sharon made a point of putting him in a position where he could not go to his people and say that I have accomplished something through negotiation. Whether it was on the roadblocks, whether it was on water for the West Bank, whether it was on prisoner releases, all the issues, the destruction of homes, the expansion of settlements, all of that. So it's not just the Palestinians who are to blame for not achieving the peace that hopefully will bring us all the peace. But Israeli leaders are equally to blame for that. And I think it is because of that we're facing the situation today where Mr. Netanyahu doesn't even recognize the two-state solution anymore. And he says that he's going to expand Israeli sovereignty to the Golan Heights and consider them Israeli territory. This is according to all international agreements, and since 1967, Mr. Dennis Ross is with us. He's been dealing with these issues extensively on those matters. The issues of sovereignty over occupied land in Palestine or the Golan Heights or any other Arab territory is out of the question. And here is an out-of-the-box idea I give to the General. General, say, let the Israeli government say, we recognize a Palestinian state. That is out of the box. And we want that Palestinian state to choose negotiators for us under UN auspices of free elections and so on. That is out of the box. And then you can deal directly with the Palestinians and not consider the Saudis or the Americans or anything like that. But as long as Palestine remains an occupied territory of Israel, I don't think you're going to get anywhere in this situation.
Just to pursue this for a second, is it to what extent do you believe that the Palestinians need Arab cover, Arab protection, Arab approval to make whatever deep compromises they will need to make to match the compromises that Israel will need to make to achieve peace? To what extent is Arab cover essential to the Palestinians?
As far as Saudi Arabia is concerned, and I can't speak for other countries, Saudi Arabia has said, whatever the Palestinians accept, we will accept. And I'm sure other countries have said similar things in the past. I'll give you an example. In 2000, and I think it was 2011, an Arab League delegation came to the United States and talked with Secretary Kerry on the issue of the Arab Peace Initiative, at which time the Arab states accepted the issue of swap of lands on the Arab Peace Initiative, which had not been discussed before, particularly with the United States. And that was an indication of how far the Arab community at the time was willing to go in accepting that you need to negotiate on issues on land and other matters in Palestine. And so the Palestinians were there, and they, of course, needed to accept that. So yes, the Palestinians have, if you like, as you describe it, the cover from the Arab world on these issues. But we need to have a serious negotiating partner from the Israeli side, and not someone who one day says, yes, I accept the two-state solution, and the next day says, no, I'm not going to accept it. That is not being serious.
Ya'qub?
I don't want to go into all the details. I can argue about the facts, which I don't agree with the facts, and what was the exact situation in which people said what they said, and I'm involved in these negotiations since 92, behind the curtains, and for a few years in front of the curtains. And so I'm very familiar with the details, and with all due respect, with some of the facts, I don't agree that these are the facts. There is one crucial test. At the end of the process, after so many years, in the spring of 2014, after a long process that was handled by Secretary Kerry, traveling between Israel and the Palestinians, I don't know for how many hours, the Americans put paper on the table. And they said, based on this paper, we want to invite both sides to negotiate. The Prime Minister was here. I was not then anymore the head of the National Security Council, but I was familiar with the details.
I thought you weren't going to go into details, General.
No, details of this event. I'm not going to all the details of the history. I think that many of what you said is not correct, but I'm not going to these details. But this is very important because that was after all these hours and events and chances and processes and governments and presidents. The Americans put a paper on the table and say, we want to invite both sides based on this paper. The Prime Minister looked at the paper and said, I don't like it. I have many reservations, but if this is an American paper, I'm coming. Then Abu Mazen was here, and they gave him the same paper, even a better paper. And Abu Mazen said, I have to consult my people in Ramallah. He is still consulting. So it is true that Abu Mazen is against terrorism. Yes, he understood that Palestinians are losing more than winning when they are using terrorism. Okay. But when it is coming to real negotiation, when you have to compromise, not just to speak about it, there was one big test in which he didn't deliver. And that was the last time in which the Americans try to convince both sides. The Israelis said, yeah, but, yes, we have some reservations, but we are coming. And the Palestinians didn't answer. So maybe the expectations of some Arab leaders and states that Abu Mazen will deliver are behind his capacity. Maybe our optimistic view about the readiness of the Palestinians is too optimistic. What I try to convince our colleagues in the Middle East is that if they didn't work in that way, maybe, I'm not sure, I don't know, but maybe in another way, under an umbrella of cooperation between Israelis and Arab states, it will be easier for the Palestinians to negotiate. It will be, from their point of view, they will understand that they have more to lose if they are not take part in the new cooperation in the Middle East. And with all due respect, it is not connected in any way to the Golan Heights, which does not belong to the Palestinians, even Arafat agree with that. It belongs to the non-exist Syrian state. And I think that it will be a huge mistake to connect both.
Well, I'm glad that you admit that it belongs to the Syrian state.
It was, no question.
Well, not according to your prime minister.
No, according to, I mean, you cannot change the history. I mean,
Gentlemen,
with all due respect, I landed there with my paratrooper battalion in the 67, so I can guarantee you that was a Syrian soil.
I'd like to ask.
You know why I know? I fought Syrian soldiers.
We figured that one out. I'd like to ask one more question on this theme and then move to a question or two about Syria, Daesh, etc. But before I leave this theme, I want to ask this. First to you, Your Highness. Your country has a special role as leader of the Muslim world, custodian of the two holy mosques. In a speech last year, you said, as an Islamic leader, the kingdom plays a special role in advocating for oppressed Muslims everywhere. In your view, is it reasonable for Israel, in a peace agreement, to ask the world to respect its unique status as the world's only Jewish state and a special role it may have on behalf of Jews everywhere? And for you, Yaakov, precisely because of Saudi Arabia's special role in the Muslim world, do you think the Saudis have a unique role to play to contribute to the resolution of that thorny problem we call Jerusalem? Your Highness.
Definitely Saudi Arabia has a responsibility and a willingness to undertake whatever it can provide to support not just Muslims, but I would say human beings throughout the world in their various issues of grievance and oppression and other matters like that. We worked for decolonization since the Second World War and continue to do so for Palestine. And we've also worked on humanitarian affairs through the United Nations, humanitarian organizations, and directly through the various programs, whether it is UNESCO, etc., etc. And yes, Saudi Arabia has a feeling that it can contribute. We're not a perfect country. This is something that we as Saudis recognize in ourselves, and we feel that we're still a work in progress. But we aspire to the higher ideals that we believe in, and hopefully in that aspiration for those higher ideals, we can contribute to the welfare of humanity. Whatever Israel chooses to call itself, that is for the Israelis to decide. It is not for me or I think others in the area to decide for Israel. States are states, and they can be recognized according to how they want to be recognized. But it is not for us to say, yes, we will accept that or we will not accept that. Had Israel accepted the two-state solution according to the Arab Peace Initiative when it was first begun in 2002, and these issues would have been included in the negotiations between the Israelis and the Arab world. And I remember at that time there was a proposition made by a friend of mine who is an American, I'm sure you all know him, James Zorbi, who made the offer that, or the idea that while Israel negotiated then with the Palestinians on issues dealing with the Palestinians, that there could be a parallel track tied to the Palestinian-Israeli negotiations that can bring in the Arab world in negotiations with Israel on matters that deal with the wider Arab world Israeli connection. And when there is progress on the Palestinian issue, there would be progress on the wider regional Arab issue. That, as I said, unfortunately, it did not come through. But it's on those issues that negotiations are important. And so you can't concede issues before you start the negotiations. Sit down on the negotiating table, engage with the other side, and then you can reach compromises, and there are going to be difficult compromises on everybody's side. All of us recognize that.
Ya'qub?
I want to begin with a story which is not related to Jerusalem. A few months ago, I took a friend of mine to visit in a place near the Jordan River called Qasr El Yahoud. It's the castle of the Jews, to translate it. This is the area in which, according to the Christian tradition, Jesus was baptized by John the Baptist. And that was an amazing moment. And the other side of the river, there were soldiers from the Jordanian army, Muslims probably. In the Israeli side, IDF forces, most of them Jews probably. And in the middle between the two groups, there people from Philippines in our side and people from French on the other side. You can hear them speaking. It's it's a Jordan River, it's a little creek, it's 8 meters. And I thought to myself, this is the Middle East of today? In one side, Muslims, on the other side, Jews, and in the middle, Catholic people are baptized themselves. It's no place in anywhere in the Middle East you can find it, with all due respect to all the others. And this is because we are ready to guarantee anyone free religious service whenever he wants. With some restrictions when it is coming to security, but other than that, Muslims, Christians, Baha'is, whatever you find in Israel, there is no anyone in the Middle East, from Gibraltar to Tehran, that this event can happen. So if at the end of the day, for reaching an agreement, some Saudis will have a job in the Temple Mountain, I don't see it as a problem. But we have to remember, at the end of the day, it's a very important place for Palestinians and Muslims. But it is the holiest place for Jews. We don't have any substitute to the Temple Mountain. We can't have one. And this is why it is so problematic to solve the problem, which is in a place which is the holiest for us and holy for others. But if a solution will include Saudis at the end, I don't see a problem.
I don't see where that has anything to do with the issue of removing the Israeli occupation from Palestine. I think the Palestinian people are there, and their humanitarian situation, by the recognition of even Israelis, is not the situation that it should be. There has to be a lifting of the occupation. The Palestinians have to have their own country. They have to have, as much as Israel has security, the Palestinians have to have security. And it is on those matters that political solutions can be reached. Whether Saudis or Jordanians or whoever can play a role in Jerusalem or something else, I don't see that has any relevance to the issue at hand. All the United Nations resolutions from 1967 up to the present require a two-state solution with negotiations between the parties concerned. And it is from that route, I think, that we can reach the political solution of finding peace and having the vision of Israel and the Arab world, instead of sitting on the opposite side of the Jordan, of being together. There's a wonderful project, I don't know if you've seen it or not, that was proposed by Rand Corporation of building a railway from the north of the West Bank to the south, connecting eventually into Palestine. If that project can be put in place, whereby it can connect with the various cities in the West Bank across extension lines from there, and with joint Israeli-Palestinian cooperation and with joint financing from the US and the world community, including the Arab world, that will go a long way to improve the lot of the Palestinians and give them a stake in the land that they consider to be theirs, and give them hope that their children will have a future as Palestinians. But the way things are going now, nobody is doing anything on those issues. And it is a pity, because as I said, we don't need Einsteinian genius nor divine revelation to know what the solution is. Two states, mutual swaps, mutual recognition, and engaging with each other.
Thank you. This discussion of peace might give the impression that the region isn't facing some of the most dangerous and threatening trends which hover above all the countries in the area. So before I turn to three of my colleagues in the audience to ask their questions, I have to ask you, gentlemen, about Syria, Iraq, the Islamic State. What is more important to resolving? The terrible leadership of Bashar al-Assad that has given such atrocities to the people of Syria, or the terrible Islamic State that has given such atrocities, erased borders, and fed a refugee crisis throughout the world? How do we prioritize? What do you see as first comes first? Do we have to make this decision, Your Highness?
Well, first of all, I wouldn't call it the Islamic State. My name for it is Fahish. Those who know Arabic know what that means. Fahish means obscene, and it rhymes with Daesh. Daesh is not a denigration, by the way. It's the Arabic equivalent of ISIS. So those of you who think that you're denigrating it by calling it Daesh, please call it Fahish. That is a more appropriate name for it than Daesh. And secondly, I blame all of us for what is happening in Syria today, because we're not doing what needs to be done. Bashar al-Assad is there, and we know what he is. He's a butcher, he's a tyrant, he kills his people, he devastates them, and he makes them into refugees and so on. And I told my European friends when they started complaining about these hundreds of thousands of refugees going to Europe, take one refugee and all these refugees will not leave Syria. Take Bashar al-Assad. And they did not, unfortunately. And I think the world community is responsible for that. Us and the Americans and the Europeans and those on this side of the equation have not done enough to help the Syrian people defend themselves. All they sought was to defend themselves. They didn't seek tanks and airplanes and missiles and so on. No, they were seeking defensive weapons to strike the planes so that they don't come and bomb them, to hit the tanks so that they don't invade their villages and destroy their homes, and to stop the helicopters from dropping the barrel bombs and so on. But throughout the conflict, from 2011 until today, none of us have been willing or able to provide the necessary means for the Syrian people to defend themselves. There's always someone who says, well, how can we be sure that these defensive weapons will not fall in the hands of the wrong people? Well, I say there are means of doing that. You can guarantee by selecting the people that you can train and make them responsible for these weapons. And let's face it, you can even send people with them to make sure that they keep those weapons in hand. ISIS is a symptom. It's not the main problem. The main problem is in Damascus, the main problem is in Baghdad, the main problem is in Sana'a, the main problem is in Tripoli. It's not ISIS. ISIS exists there because of the failing states in Syria, in Iraq, in Yemen, and in Tripoli. Fix the capitals by means of not only politics and economics, but in the case of Syria, by providing the Free Syrian Army with the defensive weapons that they can prevent Bashar's butchers from killing the people. In Baghdad, by providing the inclusiveness of a government that recognizes the Sunnis as well as the Shia and the Kurds as being part of the national makeup. In Tripoli as well, by bringing the various parts of Tripoli together, the eastern part, the western part, the southern part, etc. That's how you deal with Daesh, because Daesh is like a cancer. It grows in bodies that are weak and have no ability to defend themselves. But if you provide the necessary means to build strength from inside these bodies, they will resist the cancer.
General?
One remark which is connected the questions. I think that there is a lot of exaggeration about the bad situation of the Palestinians. It's not that it is easy to live under occupation. I don't minimize it, but if the average Palestinian compare his situation with the situation of his brothers all around the Middle East, they are not in the worst position, and in many cases they are more secure than many Arabs in independent states. And I'm not minimizing the issue between us and the Palestinians. It is still a problem and we have to solve it. And as the Prime Minister said, by having two states, one a Jewish one or the nation state for the Jewish people, if you don't want to call it Jewish state, and the other one is in a Palestinian state. But don't exaggerate and don't put it in the wrong situation related to the situation in the Middle East. With all due respect to the problems of the Palestinians, if you look around the Middle East, you see much more problems for many more Arabs. More Arabs have been killed by Arabs than Palestinians by Jews. So put it in a real proportion. first. Second, I don't think it's an Assad issue. If Assad personally tomorrow morning will leave, the problem will not be solved. The blood between the 12% Alawites and the 85% Sunnis is not Assad's issue. It's much broader than that. And those who believe that Assad tomorrow morning is leaving to Tehran or to Moscow or to Washington, minimizing the problem. The whole Middle East today shaped by a strong friction between Shiite and Sunnis. It's not the person, it's not even the family, it's the whole sect. And why all the Alawites are behind Assad? Because they understand what I say. They understand that the minute that the other side will win, it's the end of the Alawite. It's not the end of Assad, or not only of Assad. It's the end of the Alawites. So it's more complicated than to take Assad out. It's to find a solution to the friction between the Kurds, the Sunnis, the Kurds are also Sunnis, the Alawites, the Shiites in Iraq and in Syria. It's the same problem. It's not a personal issue. It's a huge mistake to think that to focus on the person. He symbolized and present the attitude and the interest of his own sect. The fact that he is a butcher and how he treated his people. Remember that we were recommended by the Arab initiative to bring back the Golan Heights to the same person. So, you know, you cannot play it both. You can. It's the Middle East, you can play it both, but I think it's a mistake to think that it is Assad's personal issue. It's much broader than that. Israel's decision is clear. We are not taking part in this war between Shiite and Sunnis, Alawites and others in Syria, or whenever it is going to our borders, we are determined to defend ourselves, and humanitarily we are bringing into Israel everyone, doesn't matter where he is from. If he comes to our border wounded or with severe problems, thousands of Syrians took shelter in our hospitals in Israel. We try to heal them, and then they are going back to their homeland. So humanitarily, we are very open, but politically, we decided not to take part in this war within the Arab world.
On Palestine and the fact that the general says that let's not exaggerate, I remember I was in the United States in the mid-60s when the civil rights movement took place in the United States. And people, not just in the South, but even in the North in America at that time, were saying, why are these black people demonstrating and so on? Things are, don't exaggerate. They're living a good life. They find jobs, they can't things like that. And so I think this is a comparable situation on the general's view of the welfare of the Palestinians under the Israeli occupation. And I think it's the wrong thing to consider, because whatever is the case, nothing can substitute for the feeling of being who I am. I am a Saudi, and I have a nation, and I have a people, and I have a flag, and I have a history, and so on. And why do we deny that to the Palestinians? That is something that Israel has to reconcile itself to. And they went through that when they went through the issue of establishing Israel. They wanted a state for themselves. They wanted to have the Israeli state with the flag and the heroes and the history and so on. And they're denying that to the Palestinians. And on Bashar al-Assad, I disagree with the general. It's not an issue of Alawite versus Sunni. Just look of the recent declaration by leaders of Alawite tribes or clans in which they disassociate themselves from Assad. And if you look at the composition of the opposition to Bashar al-Assad, it is composed of all of the social makeup of Syria, including Alawites. And in the jails of Bashar al-Assad, there are proportionately probably as many Alawites in those jails as there are Sunnis and Christians and other compositions of Syrian society. So yes, if you take Bashar alone out of that, maybe that is not going to change the situation. But it is not a Sunni-Shia conflict in this case. It is the failure of the state structure itself that has led to the not only the destruction, but also the emergence of groups like Fahish and Jabhat al-Nusra and so on.
One of the best parts about tonight is what we're succeeding in doing is defining an agenda for the long phase of Saudi-Israeli negotiations that will come in the future. I'd like now to turn to three journalists to briefly ask questions of our panelists, and then I'll have one closing, and we'll be able to conclude this fascinating exchange. First, from the New York Times, Peter Baker, here in front.
Thank you very much, Robert. Appreciate the opportunity to ask questions. Thank you for taking the time to answer them. I wonder if I could follow up on the Syria thing just one more time, General. From Israel's perspective, what is the best outcome in Syria at this point? What's the best realistic outcome at this point? And as you watch these negotiations play out with the Russians and Secretary Kerry and so forth, what is your message to the Americans about your priorities in your neighboring state? And for His Highness, I wonder if you could, on this question of Iran, last year when Prime Minister Netanyahu was here and addressed Congress, he said that if the Iran deal was consummated, it would lead to a farewell to arms control, that was his phrase, and that there would be a nuclear arms race in the region. I wonder if you see any evidence that that has in fact begun. Is there an interest in the part of the Saudis at some point of a nuclear capacity? And if not, what would trigger that, given the current state of the Iran deal? Thank you.
He wants to know if the Saudis are going to have a nuclear bomb. General, you get to go first.
From our perspective, a democratic, free Syrian country is the best. We really believe that if we will be more democratic, free countries in the Middle East, the less the chances that we will have to go to other wars. But realistically, we know that it is not going to happen. And from our point of view, what's important is the security of Israel. We will not allow to build Iranian bases in the Golan Heights. We will not let Hezbollah to build its own launching pad in the Golan Heights. And we will continue to stop transfer of game-changer weapon systems into the hands of Hezbollah, whatever will be the agreement about the future of Syria. And we are not going to give remarks or advices to the Americans and the Russians how to solve these problems, which I believe it is more than Assad. And it is true there are some Assad supporters within the Sunni society, but you don't find Alawites within the opposition, because they understand the consequences. And because Israel is not ready to be engaged, and we are not ready to pay for solving the problem, it's big on us. We are not intent to take part in this between Arabs wars. We are very narrow in our demands, not to put more risks towards Israel in any solution which will take part in Syria.
Prince Turkey, the impact of the Iran nuclear deal on nuclear proliferation more broadly including the prospect of your own country pursuing that option?
When King Salman visited with President Obama here, and when President Obama visited King Salman in Riyadh, both expressed acceptance of the fact that the present agreement between the P5+1 and Israel and Iran will prevent Iran from acquiring weapons for the duration of the agreement. I personally have not seen whether that duration is 10 years or 15 years. I hear different views and I read about them in the press frequently. So what's going to happen after that is open to question. And that's why I've always maintained that we, particularly in the GCC states, the Gulf Cooperation Councils, must consider all options, including the acquisition of nuclear weapons, to face whatever eventuality may come from Iran. And at the same time, while I was saying that, I've always been also saying that the best way to prevent the Middle East from going the route of nuclear arms race is to have a zone free of weapons of mass destruction. We've seen that the NPT review conferences from 2010 until 2015 have talked about zone free of weapons of mass destruction, but nobody has said anything on the ground for that. And I've also mentioned that if such a zone is to be serious, that it must be guaranteed by the 5 permanent members of the Security Council, who will present to the zone the following guarantees. One guarantee is to provide technical and financial help to countries that want to develop peaceful uses of nuclear energy within the zone. And the other guarantee is to sanction any country within the zone that may want to or is seen to be developing nuclear weapons. And those sanctions should include military sanctions by the 5 permanent members of the Security Council. Now, when I make that proposition, I remember I made it to a British ambassador when I first put it together a few years back. He turned to me and he said, "Your Highness, that's a very elegant solution, but it's not going to work." Well, maybe it's not, but I think it should be put on the ground and put to the test. And the inclusion in this view of having a zone free of weapons of mass destruction, a formula for negotiation between the members of the zone on the issues that are bedeviling them, whether it is the Arab-Israeli dispute or Iran's ambitions or any other such zone confined issues, can be part of the setting up of the zone and getting the 5 permanent members to guarantee that as well. These are things that are doable, in my view, if people are serious about them.
Thank you. Joyce Karam, the bureau chief of El Hayat Arabic newspaper here in Washington. Joyce.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I only have a question for Prince Turkey. I'm from Lebanon and I plan to enjoy the rest of my vacations there without getting into any legal trouble. So I will only be directing my questions to Prince Turkey. Your Highness, you're here at a very interesting time. 48 hours ago, the Republican Party declared Donald Trump as their presumptive nominee. It's interesting that Trump also thinks the Arab world are also a bunch of free riders. I'm curious, what do you make of the Trump candidacy? And what is your message for the next administration, especially on the issue of rebalancing US-GCC relations? Thank you.
I've enjoyed, as a student, and as I told you, in the 60s, and subsequently as a frequent visitor to the United States, the spectacle of the American elections. Truly is one of the most entertaining and sometimes uplifting, other times the opposite. I think this recent spectacle has been one of the most surprising, to say the least. Not just to me, I think to you too. So I really haven't reached a judgment on Mr. Trump. For the life of me, I cannot believe that a country like the United States can afford to have someone as president who simply says, these people are not going to be allowed to come into the United States. Or the other statements attributed to Mr. Trump. So it's up to you. It's not up to me. But I remember when I was ambassador here, I was invited by a group of members of Congress, new members of Congress, in 2006, to get to know each other, as it were. And at that time, I remember I told them that the world has become so small that any law, any statement, any resolution taken in the American Congress will have a direct impact on me as a Saudi. And I followed that up by saying, because of that, I wish to have the right to vote in your elections. But I also followed that up by saying, when we have elections in Saudi Arabia, you can vote there too. This is how closely connected we all are to each other. And I just hope that you, as American citizens, will make the right choice in November.
Yours is working. Yours is working. Yours is working.
I hope that I cannot answer the question that had been asked, but
But you're Israeli.
yes. But I hope that the Israeli government will declare immediately that we will work with any president which will be elected here in America.
Thank you. I do feel it incumbent as an American to say, Your Highness, that if you like the spectacle of our elections so much, you should try them sometime. Ehud Ya'ari from Israel's Channel 2.
And don't take the Israeli one.
Sumo Al-Amir, simple question. Saudi Arabia has regained sovereignty over the islands of Tiran and Sanafir at the head of the Straits of Tiran, leading to the Gulf of Aqaba. And it is my understanding that Saudi Arabia has committed to, and these islands, of course, are part of the Israeli-Egyptian peace treaty. You have MFO, multinational force, present there. And I understand that Saudi Arabia has committed itself to abide by the clauses of the Israeli-Egyptian peace treaty. And my question is Saudi Arabia now becoming a sort of a third partner, silent partner, to the peace treaty between Israel and Egypt? Thank you.
I can answer you only by repeating what our foreign minister said, which you yourself said, that we will abide by the conditions of the agreement between Egypt and Israel. I'm not an official in the Saudi government, so I cannot tell you exactly where the Saudi government stands, but I repeat to you what the foreign minister has said. And on being a spectacle, it's better to be a watcher than a participant in it.
I've heard the statement by Foreign Minister Adel Jubeir But there are now technical issues which have diplomatic dimension, such as the presence of multi-national force troops, in this case Americans, on Tiran Island, will necessitate some maybe indirect coordination between the Saudi authorities and Israel as to their deployment and operation. Thank you.
I wish I could answer that, but I'm not in a position because I'm not an official and I don't know what the intricacies are. But just a reflection on that, I read in the papers that the United States wants to withdraw its forces from the Sinai. So I'm sure that will be a point of discussion with everybody.
Well, friends, we've come to the close of tonight's program. I just want to ask one final question of our guests. I was deciding whether to begin with this or to end with this, which is to talk about the significance of your session tonight and where we go from here between the two of you and between informal discussions of representatives of your countries. Recognizing the importance of the overall peace process, recognizing the differences that separate you, what's the next step? Can we see the two of you meet more regularly? Can we imagine non-governmental officials from your two countries meeting regularly? Is this something that both of you would welcome in the pursuit of the common objectives that you both outlined tonight, despite the differences on many of the specifics? Gentlemen.
About me, an hour from now I'm going to Princeton. So this is the next stage. About Israel-Saudi dialogue, more seriously. In many occasions, Israelis and Saudis meet each other in informal meetings. And in Israel, it's very common. It's an issue of our DNA to try to reach as many Arab leaders as possible all around the world and to try to find common language and common interest and contribute to the relations between us and our neighbors, either Palestinians or others. I'm sure that it is not the only occasion in which Israelis and Saudis meet each other, and in Israel it's not a problem. I mean, as we look around us and see the Arab countries which share so many interests with us, we understand why it is so important for Israelis to speak and to exchange views and to try to convince Arab people around us. So I think it's very important that someone like Prince Turkey, which is very high in the hierarchy of the Saudi Arabia in the past, and I don't know about the future. But from the Israeli point of view, we are ready to meet all over the world whenever there is an opportunity. So from the Israeli point of view, the fact that Prince Turkey is here, this is very significant. The fact that I'm here is not significant. It's very clear for us that we should meet any Arab leader in any occasion that they are ready to speak with us. And I hope that we will find more ways to do it, because I really believe that there is no any substitute to these open discussions between people from both sides. It's not always lead to an agreement, but it always leads to better understanding of the other side. And this is very important today in the crumbling Middle East.
We're both exes.
Our future is in our past.
don't expect too much from this. Already before I came here, lots of tweeting is going on in our part of the world about this encounter. People saying that this is Saudi recognition of Israel, this is going to be the way forward, diplomatic relations, normalization of relations, etc., etc. None of that is going to happen. It's unfortunate, but it's true. My highest wish, and I wish I could do it tomorrow, is to go and pray in the mosque in Jerusalem.
You are more than welcome.
I know, from your point of view. But unfortunately, there has to be an accommodation on the issue of the two-state solution before that can happen. And you know, it's something that hurts, but at the same time, it is something that is undoable for me. And I'm afraid that it's not going to happen in my lifetime. My hope is that in my children's lifetime and their grandchildren's time, we will have overcome these differences and become what I expressed before, people that have reached peace and can work together for the betterment of humanity. So this is how it stands today. I will meet with the general again in, I'm sure, some other venues, as I have met before. And I remember the first year I went to Davos was 2003. I had just been appointed ambassador to the United Kingdom. And at the dinner, official dinner there, across the table from me was sitting Shimon Peres. He was still president of Israel at the time. And he addressed me saying, Your Highness, I would like to meet with you. And he said, we can meet in a room, nobody will know about it, and, you know, feel free to do that. I said, Mr. President, if I'm going to meet with you, I'm going to meet with you in public. I'm not going to go into a secret room to meet with you, but you have to give me the opportunity to do that. And I think the only opportunity that someone like me or others who may wish to have the opportunity to go to these places in historic Palestine, in present-day Israel, is to have a peace with the Israeli country. And please, you can do a lot about that from here. Just keep pushing us, not just the Arabs, but also the Israelis. There is an expression that I read in your newspapers about tough love, and I think that's what you need to do, not just to the Israelis, and give us some of that love too. So push us. Don't let us sit on our backsides and allow for this situation to continue. It's not healthy for either of us.
Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking His Royal Highness Prince Turkey el-Faysul and General Ya'qub Amidror for this fascinating discussion tonight. Thank you. Thank you.